Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters, and Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Karr-Petras, and I'm here today with my fellow associate editor on the Quilters Newsletter staff, Gigi Khalsa. Welcome, Gigi.
Thank you.
Gigi's here to talk to us today about cutting 60-degree or equilateral triangles, which you used to great effect in this fantastic tree skirt that you designed for our Best Christmas Quilts 2014 issue. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
We named it Metropolitan. I kept trying to think of a way to work in like Nick and Nora Charles, but you know, has that real...
it's got a very Art Deco look, and that's a lot, in large part due to the triangles and the way that they're arranged. And I guess if you want to make the tree skirt, the pattern is available in the issue.
Right.
But today I just want to talk about the triangles in general. So 60-degree triangles or equilateral triangles, you may remember from geometry. All the angles are 60 degrees and all the sides are the same length. So you can mix and match and turn the patches around and really get cool effects, and they'll all fit together perfectly. So in this one you can see I've done hexagons, I've got little triangles here, diamonds, got triangles, and a big great 6-pointed star, so you can really get a lot of effects just depending on value and color placement.
Right, and like you said, they're pretty simple. Once you'll deal with bias on some of the edges,
That's
but
true.
Other than that, it doesn't take a lot of skill to work with them successfully. I don't think, or a lot of experience. You can jump into them pretty easily.
As long as you follow a few simple rules. You want to start your fabric, of course.
Yes,
but that helps just to keep everything the same size. And it's very easy. There are special tools available, of course. There's templates and rulers, but you can just use a standard ruler, cutting mat, and a rotary cutter and get these triangles and really have a lot of fun creatively.
Yeah, great. Well, let's take a look at some of the samples that you brought and some of the techniques that you'll show.
Okay. So in order to make those pieced triangles, the ones with the stripes on them, you want to, of course, piece your strip. And so what I've done is I just sewed my strips from selvage to selvage, and the proportions are in the issue, of course. So the first thing you want to do is make a 60-degree side. And what you can do is you'll see on my ruler, I've got a mark that goes 60 degrees both ways. And so I'm just going to use that and line it up with the edge of my fabric. I just want to make sure that it's right on there.
Right.
And then you make your first cut. Line that up. And this is probably what takes the most time of this whole process, is just making sure that everything's perfect. And so there you go, and that's your first cut. Then I'm going to flip this around so I can work with it. And the way to get your next patch is line up that same 60-degree mark with the cut you just made.
And that's why that precision matters, because if you're off by a thread or two, it's going to start adding up.
It will add up the further you get down the strip, and then your patches won't match, and you might be mad at me, and that won't be good.
Oh, Gigi, how could anybody be mad at you?
Another thing you want to do is make sure that you're right on the point.
Yes. Right
on the angle where the two sides meet. And I'm just going to go ahead and make that cut. And then to continue, I'm going to line this up with the bottom now, or the top, I guess, whichever you prefer.
That's the line going the opposite direction?
Yes, so you'll see the 60-degree mark right there, lined up with the strip, and I want to make sure that it's right at the edge there. So I'm going to just scoot that over, make sure that all my marks line up, and then I'm going to go ahead and make that cut. And you'll see how I get very different patches from the same strip.
Yeah.
And so you can have a lot of fun with this just because the proportions are so different. You can really mix it. They're basically two different patches, even though they're from the same strip. So for the sake of clarity, let's call this Unit 1 and Unit 2, just so we can tell them apart. And in the tree skirt, you use, I believe, 36 Unit 1s. and 24 unit 2s. So you'll have some left over.
When you're cutting them like this to get the correct number of these, you're going to have some leftovers of these.
You will have a couple left over. So that's a really fun opportunity to play around and make something cool, and that's exactly what I did.
Of course you did.
Yep. So I made a fun little pillow out of my leftover patches, and this really goes to show how you can arrange the same patches to get totally different effects. So I've got sort of a weird geometric thing over here, and then I've got sort of a reverse star on this side. And so I have a couple piecing tips, and I'll just go over those. So here's my patches. For example, you could arrange them to make sort of gradated hexagon here, or whatever you want. You could introduce solids or other prints and really get cool design effects. But let's say we're going to make that pillow. So I'm just going to figure out what I did.
Make the
there we go.
Over there.
Okay,
there
so we just got to scoot all these. So, and then all of a sudden you have this design, which is totally different. And what I like to do is to join these in rows. So I start by joining the pairs together, and then I'll join these to the end. Now, what you might be tempted to join them in pairs like this, but the trouble with that is once you want to join all of them together, you have an inset seam, which is
you can do, but why?
It's not terrible, but if you can avoid it, you might as well. So I prefer to do horizontal rows. So when I've got these two joined, there we go.
There you go.
And these two, no, that's totally wrong.
No.
There we go. There we go. And you'll see how it can be really confusing to figure out which one is which.
It's just playing.
Yeah. But when you go to join your patches, it's a good idea to pin which seam you're going to be sewing.
Yes.
Otherwise, you get to the sewing machine and you're like...
Wait, which side?
Yeah, so I always pin the one...
Not that that's ever happened to me, so...
Yeah, I just heard that somewhere. I've never experienced it myself. Yeah. So another fun thing about using the strips versus templates is that you can use these little dog ears to line up your next patch. And then you can use this little notch to be your 1/4 inch seam allowance. That one right there. And I definitely recommend using a design wall.
And normally when you are doing this at home, you don't have a camera on you, so
that's true.
That makes a difference.
That's true. Just join them in rows, go slowly, stitch slowly. If you want your points to match, you're going to have to pin as you sew. And just do it very carefully. You may have to take some seams out if you get the wrong side attached to the wrong thing. As you can see, it's very easy to do.
Yes. Chain piecing is maybe not always the best for this because you want to keep things...
It's true. If I have a long strip, I tend to join them in pairs, press all the pairs, and then I join the pairs into a long strip. So that's my tips for sewing them together.
Great.
Just go slow, be very careful, know what you're doing, and...
But you still had some triangles left over.
I did have some triangles left over. So, and I figured, I've got enough. I've got a tree skirt, I have a little pillow, but what if I want to go out? So I made a little clutch.
That's fantastic.
Thanks. And I just got this chain from my local craft store and made a little fancy clutch to take to all my holiday parties.
It's perfect for the holidays. This fabric line is so flexible and it's great this time of year.
Oh, I'm having an intense love affair with this with this fabric line.
Do you want to talk about that more off camera?
No, yeah, I can't get enough of it. It's great.
Spectacular. It's really spectacular. Fantastic. Well, what else do you have?
So, say you want to do triangles of a different size.
Yes.
Yes. So you want to figure out what size strip you need in order to get triangles of, say, 4 inches. So there's probably a way to do it on the computer, but I'm very analog. Yes. I just do stuff by hand.
Well, with this technique, the only specialty equipment you need is graph paper.
That's right. So,
in addition to your pencil and your ruler. So
yes. So what I do, start very simply, and I just drew a 4-inch line on my graph paper. And it's hard to see through the paper or with this cutting mat behind it, but this is basically 4-inch, and it matches up with the marks on the graph paper. And I drew a light line right through the center of that, and then I did a 1/4-inch line, which is your seam allowance. So the next step is to just line up your 4-inch mark with that line right there, and then bring the tip of the ruler right to that center in there. And then just mark that. And
this is a place where having a really sharp pencil point will, again, make a difference.
It will.
Because if it's thick or if you're off the line a little bit, it's just those little incremental measurements will make a difference in the line.
Yes. So I always use a mechanical pencil on graph paper. I just find it a lot easier. So you want to do the same thing on the other side. Just go straight from that center line right to the mark that you made. And there is your equilateral triangle. And that's not enough because we're going to be cutting and sewing these.
Yes.
So you'll just want to add your seam allowance. I love these little thin graph rulers to add your 1/4-inch seam allowance. And there you go. And now you could conceivably just go ahead and mark the tip of that, but you want to make sure that you're accurate. So once you've got your triangle drawn, you want to make sure that it will continue correctly. So I'm just going to make another 1/4-inch line, and this will be the beginning of my next triangle. So I'm going to just mark the top of that, and then mark a 1/4-inch down this way. And then all of a sudden, you've almost got a full triangle.
Right.
And the best way to finish up is just to make sure, see I've got 4 inches over there, and mark that, and put on your seam allowance, and you're done. And I went ahead and measured it, and my strip is going to be 4 1/4 inches.
So you don't really have to do any math, you just have to do the drawing.
Just measure it. And if you want to do a really big triangle, just get really big graph paper.
Right.
Do the same thing.
Yes.
And so what I did when I got my 4 1/4-inch strip, I cut a bunch of striped fabric. Rather than piecing them, I figured why not use printed stripes for the same kind of cool effect. And I did a little strip. You'll see how I press all my seams open.
Okay.
And that's how you get your little dog ears to match up.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember, but last year's Best Christmas Quilts 2013, I did the eye candy glasses case.
Of course I remember them.
And this is basically the perfect size. So I just went ahead and cut that into 4 inches by 15 inches and made a glasses case. And I believe that pattern is probably still available.
Probably. It was really, well, you're so inventive. And these are great. This is great technique to use, and as we said, it's pretty easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of skill or experience to jump into working with 60-degree triangles. So take some of these tips, just start playing around and see what you can come up with. Thanks so much for showing this today, Gigi.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters, and Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.